Yo guys, what's up? It is Ripe again. Welcome to r/ProRevenge, where bullies and annoying neighbors get the treatment they deserve. Please do me a favor and like the video if you enjoy my content, and if you're new around here, feel free to subscribe. But now, without any further ado, let's dive right into some juicy ProRevenge. Don't make my girlfriend cry. Okay, so this was a good few years ago, back when I was in high school. In case my username did not give it away, I am happily and openly gay, and I came out at about 14, around year 9 in high school, and I am British, by the way. And from that second on, I was even more of a target. I was already the preferred bullying target, and the school was aware of it, and they were also aware that my family did not take kindly to this. In my previous school, my mom had brought the police into school on the day where the younger kids were coming to see if they wanted to go there, because they were not doing anything about me being bullied. So pulled a big huff and puff smokescreen to try and make it seem like they were fixing the issue, although they never did anything. I had plenty of small regular or petty revenges throughout my years. Getting people kicked out of classes, forced into counseling, etc, but this is the big one. When I was nearly 16, I got my first girlfriend, and we will call her S. I was madly, head over heels in love with S, basically from the second I met her, even though I did not think I would get anywhere, because she was a straight girl from a good Christian family. So when we started dating, I was, naturally, over the moon. She was in the year ahead of me, so the bulk of our relationship was with her in 6th form and me in my final year of high school. Because of this, she did not get touched by really any homophobia other than hearing it secondhand from me and seeing how much it affected me. Until the day of the incident. We used to hang out in the library over lunch because the librarian was one of the few people who actually tried to keep people in order. But then it was closed one day during lunch, so we were stuck drifting around the school grounds. So we found ourselves a bench and sat, ate our lunch and chatted like normal. No real physical business, because neither of us were into that PDA. We just sat together, and once we had stopped eating, we were holding hands as we chatted. And then one of my biggest tormentors, let's call her O, spotted me. Unprotected, in the open, and with my girlfriend. She called over her group of lackeys, and they sat on the next bench and started their usual attempts of psychological warfare. At first, it was just overly loud comments about how disgusting gay people were, and how I clearly never washed, which is lies, let me assure you, and about how my girlfriend was fat, and yes, she was a little bigger, but it only made her more attractive to me. So on and so forth. So after about 5 minutes of just trying to ignore them, I encourage her to stand, and we plan to move to sit outside the library, since the librarian was still in school that day, so she could hopefully watch over us through the window. We stand and start walking, no longer holding hands, and they follow us. Side note here, I have some slight muscle problems in my legs, mostly around my knees, and these girls were aware of this, since they were in my PE class. The comments continued, along with attempting to stand on the back of my girlfriend's shoes and knee/kick me in the back of the legs so I would go down. We reach by the library, and by this point my girlfriend is clearly very shaken. So I pay no mind to the posters telling us the library is shut and hurry her in there. The librarian takes over then, looks after us straight away, calls the headmistress, etc. You would think the problem there would be over, right? You would be wrong. We are writing up what happened for an incident report, which is the standard procedure for the school, when the headmistress arrived. And so the victim blaming began. We should not have been so affectionate at school. Maybe if we hadn't been holding hands, this wouldn't have happened. We need to be more careful, and then they told me that I shouldn't tell my mom that this happened, since she would make a big deal out of it. The only reason this is not a "I got expelled because I punched the headmistress" story is because all of this, coupled with what had just happened, had my girlfriend distraught and in tears. And despite my anger, she was my first priority at the time. So I began to plan. I followed her instructions and I did not tell my mom. Not yet. I wanted to do this myself now. They had upset my girl. That was a death sentence as far as I was concerned. So first I started with the girls themselves. O had an older sister in S's year, so I befriended the older sister and we got on well. This took about a month or so, and then I wore a t-shirt around her for the first time. At the time, I was suffering quite heavily with self-harm. We have now discovered that I've got BPD, which is what was the problem with my SH, and naturally my new friend was horrified and asked what happened. Why did I do that? I told her that people like to pick on me, mostly because I was gay, and I told her about her sister. Next thing I know, O has been pulled out of school, and I find out a little while later that her mother does charity work with LGBT youth, and upon finding out that she was bullying someone to the point of SH with homophobia, she had yanked her out of school and sent her to the other side of the country to live with her grandparents and attend a different school. I also got a letter of apology from her mother, along with an offer of counseling if needed. I turned her down, but it was a nice gesture. With their head cut off, the Lakeys drifted apart. I went back to small revenges with them, getting them kicked out of classes, etc. Nothing too interesting to report there. Then came the headmistress. This one took a long time to get around to because I did not want it to lead back to me while I was still under her power. So the day after I got my exam results, I anonymously phoned OFSTED, the school inspectors. I informed them that they were allowing students to be bullied to the point of suicidal behavior and self-harm. And also that the headmistress had, on at least one occasion, if not more, told a student who had been bullied due to their sexuality that it was their fault and refused to handle the issue. And then I waited. A friend of mine was still in school, being a year younger, and she became my source of information. They went back in September and the headmistress was no longer there. Apparently, she had stepped down despite having had no feasible reason to, as the school had been doing well. We have basically come to the conclusion that she was gently coerced out of her job and simply said "step down" to save face. And the reason I'm posting this now is because I saw my old headmistress the other day while I was with a friend. She was working at Next, a clothing store, stacking shelves, etc. I asked her how she was doing and she was giving the very fake "yeah, things have been okay" BS. My friend, who is an absolute genius, instantly pretended to be my girlfriend and while in her eyesight but not talking to her, kissed my cheek and took my hand. I like to think of that like the icing on the cake. Sadly, S and I broke up when I was 17 because first relationships rarely last, but we are still good friends. And the friend who acted like my girlfriend for that moment has a boyfriend of her own, but had always been appalled by how little the school had done and wanted her own moment to rub in the face of our once headmistress. Guys, one thing I'm curious about after hearing this story, how is public display of affection handled in your country? In Germany it's very common, but I'm aware that in other cultures it's very different. Threaten my pregnant wife over parking? Enjoy your misdemeanor, HOA bully. This was last year and I just sold my home in my HOA. About 5 years ago, I bought a 1,500 square feet townhome condo in an up and coming town, right in the downtown area. This is a valuable property with home prices having increased 35% since I purchased. This was a wonderful area in walking distance of everything I loved as a single bachelor. When I moved in, all my neighbors were wonderful. We all got along great except for one person. She belonged to the HOA board but was moving on because you can only serve 8 years and we will call her Jimpy J. Jimpy J is a 65-year-old widow whose husband died unexpectedly from a heart attack. She does not have much to do and she met a man online and moved on and I was happy for her. Talking to my passive neighbors, I hear bits and pieces of why things are at the HOA because of Jimpy J and another woman who had to move because of age. On the board, the two of them bully residents. They change the landscaping from mulch to pine needles, and they stop upkeep on the pool deck because they hate kids. They reported one house for anything and everything because their kids were too loud. She bullied a woman with MS because Jimpy J was feeding feral cats and attracting raccoons and possums near our homes, and animal control was called. The residents did not like her. I got married and my wife has been living with me for 2 years now at this point. We are very happy. During this time, Jimpy J began spending more and more time with her new boyfriend, and he lives about an hour away from our house in the country. She would initially spend the weekend, then a week there, until she began living there all the time, with very little time spent here. Maybe 15 minutes to 2 hours a month would be at our complex. Now at our complex there's only one rule on parking, and each resident is entitled to 2 spots close to their building, but not necessarily in front of your unit, and there's no limit to parking spots you may occupy. Close to it is the keyword. We have new folks on the board who are all under 40 years of age, and the place is starting to get spruced up. We have some friends over regularly and they park in front of our unit. Jimpy J had 2 hip replacements done and we had not seen her in about 7 months. Our little area of the complex consists of 8 townhomes that face each other, 4 on one side and 4 on the other. There are 8 spots for 3 homes and a handicapped spot for one of our neighbors. Jimpy J started coming back around in January for longer periods and a day on the weekend to go out of town or to visit friends. She started complaining that we were in her spots. Again, there are no assigned spots, so we were willing to move our friends' vehicles for her to another empty spot. That is until she started occupying 2 spots at a time with her vehicle. This behavior continued as she would come in taking 2 spots anytime she was here. The rules in the master deed says no vehicle can take more than 1 spot without written permission from the board of directors or property management group, and cannot continue for more than 2 days with permission. This was to account for residents moving in and out. Suddenly, that spring, my wife had a medical issue and was hospitalized for 4 days and on disability for 8 weeks. My mom was the only family member on both sides that had the capability of coming down to where we live to help us out. She drove down and we needed to occupy 3 spots. I promptly let our property management company know and the board of directors know what was happening, providing them with my mom's make, model and plate number, and that she would be here 6 to 8 weeks just in case anyone had an issue. Jimpy J's first time home in 6 weeks, we had a car in front of our house, but she had room for her vehicle. She marched over and banged, and I mean it was loud, on the door, demanding we move the car, and tried to open my front door and walk in my home. Yes, she tried to enter my home. It shook my dog, who peed herself, it was that loud, who in turn growled and chased her out. I promptly told her that there was no assigned parking and the rule is 1 car, 1 spot. We would have moved the car out of respect one last time and saw she occupied 2 spots with it per usual. The next time it happened, 2 weeks later, we refused to move our vehicle. We also began taking pictures for our records and communicating with our HOA of Jimpy J's erratic behavior. She continued to arrive, bang on our door and scream at us for having a car parked in her spot. One time banging on the door, she dented the frame with her keys. A few additional times when we were not home, she would come in and park occupying 2 spots. I would take more pictures for my records in case something happened because of her erratic behavior. And finally, it happened. About this time last year, I was at the gym and I get a call from my mom and wife, frantic that someone is going to tow my wife's car. I drive home as fast as I can, and it is Jimpy J's boyfriend's son and his girlfriend, whom we have never met. This jackass, who doesn't live here and has no business here, is screaming at us and insulting my pregnant wife and mother.
My mother-in-law pays top dollar a month for these spots. You guys are breaking the rules. I'm a tow that there SUV.
All while drinking beer. Now we know he cannot do anything except scream and try to intimidate us outside. He calls his mother-in-law, who is not married to his father, about the situation. Jimpy J drives an hour to our complex, and when she gets here, she parks her car behind all three of ours and gets out, blocking us in, and I had enough. I quickly snapped some pictures, I called the police, and I will not feel unsafe or be harassed in my neighborhood by people who do not live here or are barely there. Jimpy J realizes I called the police and moves her car. I print out all my documentation, pictures and communication from the HOA. I shower quickly because I'm disgusting from the gym and throw on a nice polo shirt and shorts. My pregnant wife sits in her rocking chair and my mother sits calmly at the kitchen table. The police arrive and we can see them hollering, waving arms widely and screaming. The police come to the door and we kindly open up. Jimpy J tries to walk in before I block her and ask her to leave my property and invite the police officers inside. We apologized that we even have to call them over something so petty, but our neighbor is acting crazy and her behavior has been escalating. We explain what is happening, show them the communication from the HOA and show them pictures. The officer quickly had enough of these white trash pieces of crap, so he imposes a no trespass order on my porch and will not let her near my property. If she steps foot on our walkway, she's in violation of the order and she will be arrested. We watch him go back out and explain calmly to her, and she starts screaming along with her boyfriend's kid and his girlfriend. This goes on for a while and the officer calls for backup and the second car arrives promptly. Jimpy J promptly declares it's her property too and she pays her fees, and that he cannot do that because everything is community property outside of a home. So she goes and marches up to my stoop and he arrests her, charges her with disorderly conduct and harassment. The police then tell Jimpy J's boyfriend's son to go home and he gets in his truck with his white trash girlfriend and they drive off. As soon as he hits the road outside of our complex, the second police officer pulls him over for DUI. That's right, the drunk guy screaming at my wife and mother had been drinking the entire time and was loaded. The police could not do anything in the complex, but could when he hit the main road. Both of them were hauled off the jail and we stopped hearing from them about parking. 2 days later, Jimpy J and her boyfriend show up to the complex and they park her boyfriend's car in our lot and leave it, parked in one spot to ensure it's hers. Well, they drive off and we don't hear from them in a week and no one is home. Since Jimpy J's boyfriend does not live here and his car is abandoned, I called the HOA to report it. They came and towed his SUV. And then Jimpy J put her house on the market 8 weeks later. HOAs. Yeah, quite frankly, I've never heard positive things about HOAs in the US, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, in this story, they were actually helping the OP to some degree. Alright guys, that was all the content for today. If you liked the video, please drop a like as it helps me immensely, and please subscribe if you haven't already. A little tip for all my Ripe stars: please click the bell icon so you don't miss any of my uploads. Moreover, if you want to hear more ProRevenge about maybe a specific topic, then please tell me. Topics could be, for example, HOAs, cheating, school bullies, and so on. So I hope I get some feedback from you guys, and I see you again tomorrow.